What's up, everyone? This is Navigating the Ivory Tower, a WPTS radio podcast. This podcast talks about what it's like to be a Black student at a PWI. But this time, we're going to change things up a bit. I have a special guest, the Lieutenant Governor of Pennsylvania, Austin Davis. Thank you so much for joining me on today's show. I really appreciate it.
It's great to be with you. Thanks for having me. It's great to be back at the University of Pittsburgh and with all your listeners.
Absolutely. So I'm going to jump in with the first question. So you're a first-generation college grad who was raised in a Black working-class family in McKeesport, and now you're the first ever Black Lieutenant Governor of Pennsylvania's history. Can you talk about what it was like just navigating your ivory tower and your experience just through this path of being a politician?
Yeah, so when I started, when I was 16 years old, there was an act of gun violence in my neighborhood. And that was something that really shook me, right? It shook my foundation and that sense of safety and security that you would hope every person has in their neighborhood. And I decided that I wanted to do something about it because it wasn't the first time that violence had come to my neighborhood, but I knew that I needed to do something. And so my parents encouraged me to go to a city council meeting. I was raised in a household that was very much, if there's a problem, like you have a responsibility to do something about it. So you should go to a city council meeting and figure out what the leaders are doing. So when I went to a city council meeting, the first thing that I realized when I got there was two things. One, there was nobody who looked like me serving in city government, and there was nobody who was addressing the issue of gun violence. So at the time, I decided to start a youth advisory council with the help of my mayor at the time in my community, and started a violence prevention organization made up of young people from my high school in my neighborhood to try to take on the epidemic of gun violence that was plaguing our community. And that was really the beginning point of what put me on this journey of public service and politics that led me to this point today. I can tell you back then, I never thought I would be an elected official. I never thought that I would be Pennsylvania's lieutenant governor. I was just somebody who wanted to make a difference in my community and my neighborhood. Definitely wasn't an ivory tower.
Absolutely. And the fact that you started out so early is just so impressive. And so with your experience thinking about undergrad, what would you say that was like for you just going to like a PWI? And like, what was your experience in college when it comes to that?
So I'm going to be honest, college, there are people who high school was either like the best time of their life or college was the best time of their life. It's hard to find people who had both. College, I felt like was just something I had to kind of do and get through. It was something that like my parents had really drilled it and instilled in me that I had to go to college. I'm a first generation college graduate, my sister and I. And so that was really important to my parents. I didn't get super involved in the community at the University of Pittsburgh like I should have. I was a commuting student, so I basically came here to go to school, to go to classes, and then I went and worked. I worked all 4 years I was in college, so I was off campus. So, and I also then while I was working, I had an internship with my local state representative at the time. So I was still kind of always focused on doing like community work, working to provide and make a way through college and get through the experience. So I didn't have what you would equate to like a traditional college experience.
Absolutely. And so like you talked about just growing up in McKeesport, did you ever envision yourself just being at the place that you are? I know you talked about just not really thinking that maybe you would go into politics or really go that route, but what was really the point where it just shifted your mindset where you knew that was going to happen for you?
Yeah, growing up, I never thought I was going to be an elected official. I kind of always liked the idea of politics. I liked government. I was interested in it. But I always thought I was probably more a behind the scenes person. And then when I graduated college, I went to work for the Allegheny County Executive. His name was Rich Fitzgerald at the time. And I spent 5 years as an executive assistant in his office, and then I worked my way through the ranks and became a senior advisor, working on everything from economic development to managing his appointments to boards and authorities. And at the time, my state representative decided that he was leaving office. He had to resign from office. And so there was an opening. And I thought about running, but I was 28 at the time. Had only really had one career experience. And I thought there just had to be somebody who had like more experience than I did, right? Who was better suited for this moment. And then my boss at the time came and said, I'm coming to you because I've been waiting for you to come to me, but I think you should consider running for office and running for state representative at the time. And as I looked at the field of candidates, I realized that there were a lot of folks who wanted to run for office because they wanted the job, but didn't necessarily want to do the service. And so at 28 years old, I threw my hat in the ring to represent the community that I grew up in, that I spent my life in Harrisburg, and still really running because I wanted to make a difference in my neighborhood, not necessarily thinking I was going to have a whole career in politics.
So thinking about that, whenever you were younger and going into politics, I know a lot of times whenever we're looking at politicians, a lot of times it seems like the demographics, people seem to vote older and vote for more older people that are running. Did that ever at all like deter you or make you think that like maybe at points where you had self-doubt or maybe that you felt like maybe I shouldn't be doing this or I should wait or anything like that?
You know, what was interesting about it, my experience running for office was always the reverse. So when I announced I was running for state representative at 28, and the district I was running in was one of the oldest districts in the state. It was, I think that probably the median age was like 60 something at the time. I was shocked by how many older people were thrilled at the possibility of a young person running for office. So many people, when I knocked on their doors, said, I've been waiting for somebody like you because what we have has not been working. And we need young people to step up to the plate and take the mantle of leadership. And that was the same thing I found when I ran for lieutenant governor back in 2022. People were genuinely excited for me as a young person, and they were excited about the new leadership that I could provide. I think I understand it a little bit more now that I'm a father. I became a dad for the first time 2 years ago to a baby girl. And, everything that we do in government and politics is about the future. It's about how do we make a better life for the next generation of people that are coming. And you want those young people to be invested in those decisions because the decisions that are made today are going to affect them a lot longer than older generations. So I was always shocked by how supportive older people were to support my leadership and my campaigns for office.
That's really good to hear. I feel like especially just for people that are younger that might want to get into politics and just aren't sure just because of some of those barriers that they've seen. But it's good to see that you kind of have had the opposite experience with that.
And I will say in this moment, particularly as you look across the Democratic Party, there are folks who are yearning for new leaders. I had a phone call with a woman yesterday who told me that she was not voting for any candidate over the age of 60 anymore.
Oh, wow.
That she really wanted young people to step up and make a difference in their communities. And so I think there are people out there who are yearning for young people to run for office, to get involved in the process and take on the mantles of leadership. And so anybody who's listening, if they're thinking about getting involved in the process or running for office, I would encourage them to do it.
Absolutely. So, were there ever moments where you just felt really underestimated throughout your political career? And how did you respond whenever you felt those ways?
Yeah, look, I think I felt underestimated at every point in my career, from being a young person showing up to a city council meeting at 16 years old to launching a campaign for state representative at 28. And oh, by the way, when I ran for state representative and got elected, I was the first African American to ever win that seat in that district.
Wow.
The first African American to ever represent a state house district in Western Pennsylvania outside of the city of Pittsburgh. So I would think I was underestimated from the beginning that I'd be able to run a campaign and actually win. And then when I decided to run for lieutenant governor, to become Pennsylvania's first black lieutenant governor and the youngest lieutenant governor in the country, I think there were a lot of people who questioned whether I was going to be able to do it and whether I was going to be able to pull it off. And I think what I did at every point that folks kind of underestimated me was just lean in with hard work, was just show up as my authentic self and talk about what my vision was for the people I was seeking to represent. And ultimately that resonated and was able to win the day.
That's great. And so when you're in those moments, like, how do you stay grounded, especially whenever it comes to spaces like you're talking about that just historically don't have people that are either people of color or like anything like that?
I really remember back to why I got involved in politics in the first place. And it wasn't to have a title. It wasn't to have a big office. It wasn't for notoriety. It was to make a difference in my community, and it was to make the people I represented, their lives better. And every day I get up, I give 1,000%, and that's what really drives me and what serves as my compass. I grew up, as you mentioned earlier, in a working class family. My dad is a Pittsburgh Regional Transit bus operator. He's driving a bus today to help folks here in the city get where they need to go. And I think coming from that type of experience really keeps me grounded in who I am as a person and what I believe and where I think Pennsylvania should go.
Absolutely. And I think it's just like really nice to see a politician that understands that, because I think there are a lot that maybe don't have those backgrounds and don't understand really what it's like to either come from a working class family or middle income or anything like that. So I think it's really refreshing, because oftentimes like we're just not exposed to that when it comes to politics.
Yeah, and it can be, running for office is an expensive proposition. And
Right.
not just raising the funds to run for office, but like just being in the position to run for office, right? I didn't go to college with people who could fund my campaigns. I didn't grow up in a community that could fund my campaigns. And so, you have to work a little bit harder to be a part of the process. And it shouldn't be that way. Everybody should have an opportunity to serve if they want to. But that's just the unfortunate part about how our system is currently set up.
Oh, yeah, 100%. And so, whenever you think about your earliest role models or leaders that you looked up to, how did they shape you and who you are today? And who are some of those people?
I had so many role models. When I think back to when I was a kid growing up, from my dad to I grew up in a really large family. I had 7 uncles growing up that all served as really strong role models for me and in my family. So at the base level, I came from a lot of folks who expected great things from me, regardless of what I was going to do and who pushed me to be the very best person that I could be. And then as I got into politics, I met a lot of people who mentored me and supported me along the way. There's a woman by the name of Loretta Diggs, who was a McKeesport City Councilwoman. She was the first black woman to ever become vice president of the McKeesport City Council, and she just passed away this past year. But somebody who really encouraged me at a very pivotal age that I could do this, that I could get involved in the process. To my boss, County Executive Rich Fitzgerald, when I worked for him in county government, somebody who encouraged me to run for office for the first time. I firmly believe that at every point in your life, you should either be a mentee or a mentor to someone, and that we all have a responsibility to open the door for a little bit wider for the next person that's coming along. I carry a big responsibility as Pennsylvania's first black lieutenant governor, but that will mean nothing if I'm the last. And so I have a responsibility to make sure that somebody else has the same opportunity to walk through that door to serve at the highest heights of power. And I think that's just important for every person who occupies these spaces.
Definitely. And whenever you're having these moments of either like questioning yourself or self-doubt or anything like that, do you lean on any of these mentors or call them, or even as like re-elections are coming up and just stressful times?
So when I became lieutenant governor, there's a guy by the name K. Leroy Irvis, and I believe we have the K. Leroy Irvis Hall is on campus here. And K. Leroy Irvis was a state representative from Pittsburgh who represented the Hill District. He was the first black speaker of the House of Representatives here in Pennsylvania in the 80s. The first black speaker of any state house since Reconstruction. And he has passed away, but when I first became lieutenant governor, there was a bust of him in the Capitol that wasn't really in a prominent place. And I had it moved to the lobby of the lieutenant governor's office as a consistent reminder every day that I go to work of the leadership that I should be striving to provide this Commonwealth and the level of service that I should be reaching towards. I do have a lot of folks that I rely on today, but I really do look to the leaders of the shoulders in which I stand for my strength.
That's awesome. And so whenever you're just thinking about what you represent and how you're talking about just being like the first black lieutenant governor, do you ever feel any sense of pressure just as a leader and people looking up to you in the community?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a real responsibility, right? not just as an African American, but as a leader, right? That you have a responsibility to fight for your constituents and to help provide for their most basic needs, and to make sure that you leave that door a little bit wider for the next person that might come. So I feel that responsibility in the sense of like my job and the responsibilities that I have to the people of this Commonwealth. And that's something that I carry every day. And I think it's something that every elected official carries every day that they get up to serve.
Oh yeah, 100%. I feel like especially like if you're new to politics and people may not know you and people may question you and things like that. So I'm sure that comes up a lot, and just feeling like you have to like prove yourself day by day. So
Yeah,
that's understandable.
absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. And so when it comes to just different things that have happened in your career, like mistakes or places where you feel like you've fallen, like how do you think any of those moments have shaped you and who you are?
They're all learning experiences, right? They are all lessons. And politics is, in running for office is one of those things where you're going to make a lot of mistakes. There's not a playbook to follow. Every election is different. Every office is different. Every person is different, right? And so I think what you do is you use them as learning tools, right? That everybody's going to make a mistake, but how do you learn from that and don't make that mistake again? And so that's kind of what I focus on as I make those mistakes from time to time.
Absolutely. So thinking back to like you mentioned with the Hill District and how there's just such a big influence, even with the Pittsburgh Courier, thinking about that and just how Black Pittsburgh has shaped this city and its foundation. What do you think that just this history has often just we haven't really seen? I feel like the side of Black Pittsburgh's history and how it hasn't really been shown as much. How do you think that we could really showcase this being a part of like Pittsburgh's identity and just the Black people here?
Yeah, look, so I think, and I recognize that I think it has taken some folks a longer time than others to recognize that our diversity is our strength, and that every person has contributed to the fabric of not just the city of Pittsburgh, but the Pennsylvania and the United States of America. And I think today we are much more we are have a greater ability to recognize that. And I think if you look at the city's landscape in terms of the August Wilson Center or the Roberto Clemente Museum or all of the things that are named after prominent African Americans who have served. There are a number of things that are named after Kay Leroy Irvis that I've mentioned earlier. But the Black history that continues to happen every single day, from Congresswoman Summer Lee serving in the United States House of Representatives as the only Black woman representing Pennsylvania in the United States Congress, is from Pittsburgh and represents Pittsburgh. That Pittsburgh just had its first Black mayor in our entire city's history, and that Pennsylvania's first Black lieutenant governor comes from Pittsburgh. So I think we're much more adept at recognizing our history today, and it has certainly taken a long time for some folks to recognize it. But I think overall in today's society, there is a large recognition that Black Pittsburghers and Black Pennsylvanians have contributed a large role to what is the success that we see in our region.
Absolutely. And so I know you mentioned Summer Lee, and when you think about Ed Gainey and just other Black politicians, do you guys have a sense of like a support system, especially when it comes to like the area of Pittsburgh and just being the first and just being able to just share those achievements with each other and be able to uplift each other whenever you feel like that's needed?
Yeah, we are all very much connected. And when you think back to our history, we all served in the State House of Representatives at the same time, representing different districts in this region, and all kind of elevated around the same time. From Ed Gainey was elected Pittsburgh's first Black mayor, and then shortly after, the same year, Summer Lee and she was elected to Congress. I was elected lieutenant governor. And yeah, you certainly do lean on each other as a support system. We are friends outside of politics, and I think that is unique in the sense that politics, sometimes you don't make true friends, but I think we are people that really care about each other's well-being outside of a political sense, that we are supporting one another. And so, yeah, there is that support system that exists. And I will tell you, it exists across the Commonwealth, all across Pennsylvania.
And that's really nice to hear about because I think that's something in politics you just either don't often see or even just hear about in general. Or I think sometimes when people think about like political ads and sometimes like, when people are trying to get reelected, you don't see as much of like politicians supporting each other. But I think that's really nice to see like you guys are building a community. And like you said, that there are other politicians that are doing the same.
Absolutely.
So whenever it comes to just inequities and inequalities that are happening, and whether it's in the city of Pittsburgh or just broader in the United States, and of course, all those things when it comes to politics don't get fixed overnight. But are there any specific policies or just anything that you specifically like to address whenever it comes to inequity or inequalities, whether it's in Pittsburgh or anywhere else?
Yeah, so we've done a lot of work in my office around public safety, around the issue of gun violence. We have created the first Office of Gun Violence Prevention here in Pennsylvania's history. We know that oftentimes minority communities are victims of violent crime in a lot of ways. And so we've done a lot to help drive down that crime, but also to create ladders of opportunity for every person to succeed. I'm really proud of the fact that the governor and I have made historic investments in public education in Pennsylvania to make sure that every child, regardless of their zip code, has access to a quality education to level the playing field. I'm really proud of the fact that we continue to create multiple avenues to success. If a young person wants to go to college, we want to make sure it's affordable. But if they want to start a small business here in Pennsylvania, we want to make sure that they have the resources that they need to do that. Or if they want to join an apprenticeship, join a union through an apprenticeship program, we want to make sure that's available too. And I'm really proud of the work that we've done to expand those things, and I think all of those things will make a huge difference in the inequities that some communities have been facing.
And that's great to hear that you're just really focusing on some of those core issues that are affecting our city. And when you think about some other ones, one that comes to mind in particular is redlining and like thinking about just some of how the districts are mapped and things like that. And just long-term issues that really just snowball based on that. Is there anything just like repairing wise that you yourself or maybe other Pennsylvanian politicians are working on to like fix some of these issues?
Well, housing is a huge issue that folks are grappling with here in Pennsylvania. It's an issue that I personally dealt with. My wife and I bought a home 2 years ago when we were expecting our daughter, and we put offers in on 8 different homes before we finally got one of them accepted. And the governor and I have rolled out our housing action plan a few weeks ago, and we're putting $1 billion to build and create more housing here in Pennsylvania so that every person can have that ability to find their piece of the American dream. I think that's a huge part in some of the inequities that we've been seeing across the Commonwealth, and I'm really excited about the work we're doing to change that.
Absolutely. And that sounds like really great work that you're doing. And so just like you talked about, just in the U.S. and specifically at Pittsburgh is ranked one of the worst U.S. cities for Black home ownership and racial wealth disparities. So when it comes to that, is there anything that you just specifically would want to do, or even in the future, just to like address some of these gaps that we're seeing?
Yeah, I think the biggest problem is we need more supply. We don't have enough of a supply both for affordable and quality housing.
Right.
We are seeing folks just struggle to find that, and I think the governor's housing action plan, the $1 billion we're proposing in a fund to do that, is going to have a significant impact here in the city of Pittsburgh, but across Pennsylvania in terms of making Pennsylvania a leader in housing.
That's great to hear. And I think it's something, especially even like college students and people that are just coming to the city for different reasons. I think housing is a big issue that people really want to see being addressed. So it's great that you guys are doing that and also have that on your agenda as well. And kind of similar to that, so when we're thinking about just like different businesses and just receiving opportunities, minority-owned businesses seem to disproportionately have a smaller percentage when it comes to state contracts. So with this issue, how does your campaign or anything that you're working with just really want to address some of those issues when it comes to those opportunities?
Yeah, when we first came in office, one of the things that I chaired was the Pennsylvania, and I still chair it, is the Pennsylvania Advisory Council on Inclusive Procurement, to figure out how the state could be a better partner for diverse small businesses here in Pennsylvania. And I'm really proud of the fact that this year is the second year that we have spent over $1 billion with small diverse businesses here in Pennsylvania. We've launched a new micro and mid-sized business program to work with diverse small businesses to help them build capacity and to help them understand how to do business with the Commonwealth. I think we have made some tremendous strides in creating more opportunities for diverse businesses, and quite frankly, we are just getting started.
That's great to hear. So, whenever we're thinking about just even current issues that I feel like a lot of younger students and younger people in the city are really concerned about, definitely what comes to mind is ICE and just immigration in general and just some of like the policies and the way things are changing. Is there anything in particular, just when it comes to your campaign, where you guys are focusing on that, or because I feel like things are constantly changing, like day to day, just by any of those policies?
Yeah, so the governor has been pretty forceful in his response. So we know that the federal government has secretly tried to build an ICE facility in Berks County in Pennsylvania. And he has been clear that our administration is not supportive of that. We have used some of our permitting processes to begin to slow the process down. The Department of Environmental Protection just denied, I think, a number of their permits. We have continued to work to make sure that Pennsylvania is a welcoming environment. Our state police officers do not ask immigration questions when they are interacting with the public. It is really unfortunate that the federal government has injected chaos and confusion into this process, and I fundamentally believe it is making our communities less safe. It is causing harm between the critical relationship that we need between law enforcement and the community to do their job. And I think it's really disappointing that the Trump administration continues to traffic in fear.
Absolutely. And even just what I'm thinking about as currently being a college student and going to the University of Pittsburgh. And we just have so many international students here. And I know some of my friends that are from different countries and stuff, sometimes whenever they might be interacting with law enforcement, aren't really sure what to do in these situations. But do you have any advice for students that may have some of these interactions or may not know exactly what to do to either keep themselves safe or just to feel comfortable on their college campus?
Yeah, look, I think one, understanding your rights is fundamental. Understanding, and there are a number of organizations both on campus and around the country that can help you understand what your personal rights and freedoms are. I would just encourage folks to don't let fear captivate you, right? You still have to live your life. You still have to figure out how to navigate in a very challenging time. But I also think this is an opportunity on why young people need to be engaged in the political process and understand that elections have real consequences. And I think we're seeing that play out in a very real way every day.
I 100% agree with that. And another issue that I feel like is really big, especially when it comes to Pennsylvania, Black Pennsylvanians that have been incarcerated disproportionately have high rates that we see compared to some white residents here. So how are you working to address some of these disparities just with some of the boards that you're a part of?
Yeah, so I'm really, one of my roles as lieutenant governor is I chair the Pennsylvania Board of Pardons. And so for anybody who is seeking a pardon, or if you are convicted of a crime of violence and you're sentenced to life, you have to come through the board to get a recommendation to the governor. We've worked really hard to modernize that process to make sure we're bringing second chances to folks a lot earlier. One of the first bills that the governor signed was a Clean Slate Act to help clear up a lot of records for folks who have been trying to get things off their records. I think last year it was 250 individuals alone, and so we are starting to see a lot of progress as it relates to criminal justice reform in Pennsylvania. But the work we're doing in the pardon section, I think, is really rewarding, from expanding the amount of folks who are working in the office, making it easier for folks to apply online, modernizing the process, we are having a record amount of board meetings in terms of under our administration than we've had in previous administrations. And so I think we've made a significant amount of progress. We still have a lot of work to do, but I think we're on the right path.
Absolutely. And so whenever it comes to just Allegheny County and Black residents that live here, it seems like they're experiencing high rates of maternal mortality and chronic illness. So in just with all these issues dealing with just like racial health disparities, how is this something that it seems like it's just, I would say, more of like a oversight and just some issues that continue to happen? Is there anything in particular when it comes to your political philosophies or anything like that to just help people in the area that are experiencing some of these issues?
Yeah, this is obviously something we dealt with. I'm married to a black woman, and when we had our daughter, we had to think about a lot of things that other folks don't have to think about because of the maternal mortality rate among black women. I can remember very clearly my wife saying to her doctors at the time that my husband is my advocate. I expect you to respect him, and I respect you. I expect you to listen to him because his only goal is to make sure that I and our daughter get home safely. And this is something that my wife has been a leader on, but also the governor and I have taken very seriously. For the first time ever, we've invested millions of dollars in maternal health at the state level to help make sure that black women are having an empowering birth experience. And I think we're going to continue to make sure that those investments happen and that the Department of Health is doing everything they can to be proactive to make sure every person has an empowering birthing experience here in the Commonwealth and in Allegheny County as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I feel like a lot of people just don't realize that this is something that impacts millions of black women every day. And it's good that you're advocating not only for your wife, but other people that are experiencing these things, especially not everyone has an advocate either. Yeah. So I think that's a really important thing to hone on. So I'm really glad, and it's good that you're advocating for that.
Yeah, and we're going to continue. I will tell you there's some more news that we're going to make on it in a few weeks. So put a pin in that. Stay tuned.
Okay, that sounds great. And so when it comes to college students and that specific demographic, it seems a lot of times when it comes to politics, people seem to feel disconnected. How would you say that it would be a good way for either students to get involved, whether it's activism or kind of knowing on what's going on in their local government? Because I think a lot of students sometimes when things might seem overwhelming or whenever politics may not seem to be going the way that they're expecting, whether it's like elections or things like that, just I guess how to keep hope, but also like keep on with advocacy as well.
Yeah, look, I think when people see politics, they often see CNN, MSNBC, Washington, D.C., but all politics is local. Everything starts in your community. And I hope people take away from our conversation that for me, this started in McKeesport. It started with me wanting to make a difference in my community. And I think that is the most rewarding part of politics when you're involved in your local community at your local level with your neighbors. So I'd encourage folks to turn the TV off, put Twitter and Instagram down for a few minutes, get out and talk to your neighbors and engage in your local community and just be of service. And that, some people will run for office. That doesn't mean everybody has to run for office, but I think we all have a responsibility to give back to our community in some way. And I think part of that is whether that's volunteering at a local on a local board or commission or a local community service agency. That's, I think, the best way to get involved in what I will call small p politics, but it has the biggest impact.
Oh, yeah, 100%. I know even me personally, I do a ton of volunteering, and I'm a part of a historically black sorority, and our big thing is greater service, greater progress.
What sorority?
Sigma Gamma Rho Sorority Incorporated.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, so it's part of the NPHC, and even just being a part of like that type of community and being a part of people that are just advocating for black students and black people in our local community. So I think it's nice whenever you're in college, just being able to find those groups and with like-minded people for sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So what's next for you?
Yeah, for me, there's been a lot of volunteering. I do work with Pit Pantry, so I do that every week. So that's what I try to do. I try to have my podcast out here to make sure people have a spot to advocate, whether it's for things they're personally working on or just their experience at predominantly white institutions. I'm actually meeting with this young lady who goes here at Pitt, and she's going to be talking about her role on social media, and she talks all about Pittsburgh history and just being making sure we're getting that out there and everything. So I'm really excited to have an interview with her and sit down. And her platform is really growing, and I think it's great because I think there's so much Black history that people don't even know about when it comes to Pittsburgh.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for putting a highlight on this.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for being on this episode of Navigating the Ivory Tower. Is there anything else that you want to mention before we close this off?
Look, I just want to encourage all your listeners to get off the sidelines, to get in the game and be engaged in this political process, be engaged in their community. Because their voices matter and their voices are needed now more than ever.
I think that's a really important message. Again, thank you so much to Austin Davis, our Lieutenant Governor of Pennsylvania, for joining us today on Navigating the Ivory Tower. And this episode was brought to you by WPTS Radio and edited and filmed by Amanda Bobish. Tune in next time to hear what it's like to be at a PWI.